My mom faked our deaths, kidnapped me, changed my name, then hid in my backseat after I met my real dad. When I told her I finally knew the truth, she smiled and said, "But you still came back to me, didn't you? I just drove." That was 3 months ago. Last night, she tried to break into my apartment again. The day everything changed started out painfully normal. I was on my way to work, running late, sipping coffee that tasted burnt, scrolling through notifications at red lights. Then a call came in from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. "Is this Maya?" I paused. "Yes, this is Officer Delgado. I think we have some information about your family you may want to know." That sentence split my life into two. He told me a woman had been arrested in a welfare fraud case. They'd raided her home, found documents like birth certificates, IDs, medical records, all tied to names I recognized. One of them was my mother, but not the name I knew her by, her real name. And apparently, my real name wasn't Maya. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it didn't compute, like hearing someone say the sky was red. I told him there had to be a mistake. My parents were middle class, boring, normal people. They paid taxes, went to church, and watched cable news. But then he read my childhood address, my real and fake social security numbers. And suddenly, the woman I called Mom had never legally existed. Officer Delgado told me to come in and give a statement as they were looking for my mother. I decided to swing by her place first. On my way there, I called her 6 times. No answer. I texted, "Call me now. It's important." Nothing. I ended up outside her house an hour later. There was police tape across the front yard. The lights were off. The driveway was empty. I went in through the back door because I knew she always forgot to lock it. Every photo was gone. Not a single frame left on the walls. It was like she had evaporated. I called my aunt, the one I used to stay with during summers. She picked up on the 3rd ring, sighed like she knew this day would come. "Sweetheart," she said, "I'm so sorry." That's when she told me everything. My mother had changed our names and moved states after a custody battle with a man who was my biological father. She faked our deaths, fled, built a lie, and told it so well she even convinced herself. I was 3. Only my family knew that she wasn't dead. She told everyone my dad had abused her, said he was dangerous, unstable, obsessed. But according to my aunt, it was the other way around. He had sole custody while she only had visitation. Until one day, she disappeared. With me. The courts looked for her. He filed reports. My aunt said he never stopped trying to find me. He even started a nonprofit for missing children. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was raised to believe I had no father. Now I learned I'd been stolen from him. The next few weeks were a fog of questions no one could answer. Who was I really? Where was my mother now? Could I trust anything I remembered? And then I got a letter. It was postmarked 2 days before the arrest. Inside was a note. "If you're reading this, it means I couldn't stop it. I did what I had to do to protect you. Never doubt that. Love, Mom." No return address. Just a printed photo of us. Me at 4, her in oversized sunglasses, holding me like I was something sacred. But was I? Or was I just something stolen? I reached out to the nonprofit, the one my father, my real father, had started. I didn't know what I would say. But when I called, the man who answered said, "Is this Danielle? Or do you go by another name now?" He started crying before I did. We talked for hours, and for the first time in my life, I saw myself in someone else's face. His voice cracked when he told me about the teddy bear I used to carry everywhere, how I used to spin in circles until I fell over. He didn't sound dangerous. He sounded like a man who had been grieving for 20 years. I wanted to see him, but something held me back. I couldn't shake the feeling that my mom might resurface, that she might be watching, that if I stepped too far into this new truth, she'd drag me back into the lie. She still hadn't been found, and part of me didn't want her to be, but the other part, the part that still remembered how she sang to me when I was sick, how she packed handwritten notes in my lunchbox until I graduated high school. That part wanted answers. So I decided to get those answers, and I planned to burn every lie that got me here. I spent the next few days in a weird limbo. I kept going to work at the marketing firm where I'd been for 3 years, but I couldn't focus on anything. My coworker Tara noticed something was off when I completely blanked during a client presentation. She cornered me in the break room afterward. "You okay? You seem really out of it," she said while refilling her coffee mug. I just nodded and mumbled something about not sleeping well. What was I supposed to say? Hey, turns out my whole life is a lie and my mom kidnapped me as a toddler? Yeah, no. That night I dug through my apartment looking for anything that might give me clues about my past. I found an old shoebox full of childhood mementos my mom had given me when I moved out. Report cards, drawings, birthday cards. I stared at my kindergarten school photo. The little girl smiling back at me was named Maya Wilson, except she wasn't. She was Danielle Harmon. I didn't even know who that person was. I called in sick the next day and drove to the police station to meet with Officer Delgado. The station was busy, phones ringing everywhere. I sat in a hard plastic chair for almost an hour before he came out to get me. He led me to a small room with no windows and pulled out a thick folder. "We found these in the raid," he said, sliding several documents across the table. My hands shook as I looked through them. My original birth certificate, my social security card, newspaper clippings about our tragic deaths in a supposed car accident, court documents showing my father had full custody, police reports my mother had filed claiming abuse, all dismissed for lack of evidence. "Your mother was very thorough," Officer Delgado said. "She created new identities for both of you. We're still trying to track down all the false documentation." I felt sick. "Have you found her yet?" He shook his head. "No sign of her. She cleared out her bank accounts 2 days before the raid. We think she was tipped off somehow." I left the station with copies of everything, sat in my car for 20 minutes just staring at the steering wheel. Then I drove to my Aunt Patty's house. I needed more answers. Aunt Patty lived in a small house about 40 minutes outside the city. I'd always thought she was my mom's sister, but now I wasn't sure of anything. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been watching for me. I figured you'd be back, she said, leading me to her kitchen table. I spread out all the documents. Tell me everything. No more lies. Aunt Patty wasn't actually my aunt. She was my mom's cousin, who helped her disappear with me. She told me how my mom had been diagnosed with some kind of personality disorder years ago, but refused treatment. How she became obsessed with the idea that my father was going to hurt me, despite zero evidence. How she planned our deaths for months. Your father was a good man, Maya. I mean, Danielle, she said, correcting herself. He never hurt either of you. Your mother convinced herself of things that weren't real. I asked her why she helped my mom if she knew it was wrong. She threatened to hurt herself if I didn't, Aunt Patty admitted. And I was worried about what she might do to you if she felt cornered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father, my real father, and what he must have gone through. 20 years thinking his daughter was dead. I pulled up the website for his nonprofit on my phone, Finding Hope, Reuniting Families. There was a photo of him on the About page, Richard Harmon. I had his eyes, his smile too. The next morning, I called the nonprofit again. A woman answered, this time introduced herself as Melissa, the office manager. I asked to speak with Richard Harmon. My voice cracked when I said his name. May I ask what this is regarding? She asked. Tell him it's Danielle. There was a long pause, then some muffled conversation. A minute later, I heard his voice again. Danielle, is it really you? We talked for almost 2 hours. He told me about the day I disappeared, how he'd picked me up from preschool and my mom was supposed to have her weekend visitation. He dropped me off at her apartment, and that was the last time he saw me. By Monday, when I didn't return, both of us were reported missing. 2 weeks later, a car registered to my mom was found in a lake. 2 bodies were supposedly inside, but they were too damaged to identify properly. It was all staged. I never believed you were dead, he said. Something never felt right about it. He asked if we could meet, said he lived about 3 hours away in the next state. I agreed to drive up that weekend. We set a time and place, a restaurant called Milo's near his home. I hung up, feeling both excited and terrified. That night, someone broke into my apartment. I came home from work and immediately noticed the door wasn't locked properly. Inside, nothing seemed missing, but things were slightly moved. My laptop was open when I'd left it closed. The shoebox of childhood mementos was in a different spot. I called the police, but they didn't find any evidence of forced entry. They suggested I might have forgotten to lock up properly. But I knew my mother had been there. I stayed at a hotel that night, too freaked out to sleep in my apartment. I didn't tell Richard about it when he texted to confirm our meeting. I didn't want to scare him off before we even met. Saturday morning came, and I got in my car to drive to meet my father. Every mile marker made my heart hit faster. What would I say to him? What would he say to me? Would we have anything in common? Would he be disappointed in who I'd become? I stopped for gas about halfway there. While the tank was filling, I went inside to grab a bottle of water. When I came back out, I noticed a car parked on the other side of the station. A woman with sunglasses and a baseball cap was watching me. She quickly looked away when I noticed her. My stomach dropped. It looked like my mom. I quickly finished pumping gas and got back in my car, locking the doors immediately. When I looked again, the woman and her car were gone. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe everyone was starting to look like my mom now. The rest of the drive, I kept checking my rearview mirror. Every car that stayed behind me for more than a few minutes made me nervous. By the time I pulled into the restaurant parking lot, my hands were shaking. I sat there for a few minutes, trying to calm down. Then I saw him walking toward the entrance. Richard Harmon, my father. He was taller than I expected, with gray at his temples and the same nose I saw in the mirror every day. I got out of my car and stood there, frozen. He turned, somehow sensing me. Our eyes met across the parking lot. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was looking at a part of myself I never knew existed. I got out of my car and walked toward him. My legs felt like jelly. He stood there, just staring at me like he was seeing a ghost. I guess in a way, he was. Danielle, he said, his voice cracking. Not a question, a statement. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We stood there awkwardly for a few seconds before he asked if I wanted to go inside. The restaurant was one of those casual family places, with photos of local sports teams on the walls. The hostess led us to a booth in the corner. I slid in across from him, still not sure what to say. I can't believe you're really here, he finally said. I've imagined this moment so many times. I fidgeted with my napkin, folding and unfolding the corners. I don't even know what to call you, I admitted. Richard is fine, or whatever you're comfortable with. The waitress came by for our drink orders. I got water. He ordered coffee. When she left, he pulled out his wallet and showed me a worn photo. This is the last picture I have of us together, he said. I took it carefully. A younger version of him was holding a little girl, me, on his shoulders at what looked like a zoo. We were both laughing. I had no memory of that day. I was 3 here? He nodded. Your favorite animal was the giraffe. You called them tall horses. Something about that detail hit me hard. It felt real in a way nothing else had so far. I handed the photo back, blinking fast to keep from crying. We ordered food, but I barely touched mine. Richard told me about my early childhood. How I loved strawberry ice cream, but hated strawberry milk. How I had an imaginary friend named Buster who was a talking frog. How I insisted on wearing my Halloween costume, a bumblebee, for 2 weeks straight until he finally had to wash it while I was asleep. What happened between you and my mom? I finally asked. His face changed. He set down his fork. We met in college, got married young, Had you right away. Things were good at first, but then he paused. Your mother started changing, becoming paranoid. She'd accuse me of things I never did. Following her, checking her phone, talking about her to strangers. Did you ever hurt her? I had to ask. Never, he said firmly. I swear to you, Danielle, I never laid a hand on her. I tried to get her help. She was diagnosed with delusional disorder, but she refused to stay on medication. She became convinced I was going to take you away from her permanently. But you had custody? He nodded. The court gave me primary custody because of her instability. She had visitation every other weekend. I never tried to keep you from her. I wanted you to have your mother in your life. The more he talked, the more I believed him. He wasn't what my mother had described all these years. He wasn't a monster. He was just a dad who lost his daughter. After lunch, we walked around the small downtown area. It was awkward at first, but gradually became more comfortable. He showed me pictures of his life now. He'd remarried 10 years ago to a woman named Elaine. They didn't have children together, but she had a son from a previous marriage who was now in college. Elaine knows all about you, he said. She's helped me keep the nonprofit going all these years. I felt a pang of something, jealousy, sadness that he'd moved on, but that wasn't fair. Of course he'd moved on. He thought I was dead. Would you like to see where I live? He asked. It's not far from here. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to see it, but another part was still cautious. Maybe next time, I said. This is a lot to process. He nodded, understanding. Of course, whatever you're comfortable with. We exchanged phone numbers and promised to stay in touch. As we walked back toward the parking lot, he asked the question I'd been dreading. Would you want to try having a relationship? I know I can't be your dad overnight, but maybe we could get to know each other. I didn't know what to say. Everything was happening so fast. I need some time to think about it, I told him. This is all still so new. He looked disappointed, but nodded. I understand. I've waited 20 years. I can wait a little longer. We reached my car and he awkwardly opened his arms, asking without words if a hug was okay. I stepped forward and let him embrace me. It felt strange, but also somehow familiar, like a memory my body remembered even if my mind didn't. Drive safe, he said as I got into my car. I nodded and started the engine. As I adjusted my rearview mirror, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Someone was crouched in my backseat. My mother sat up, pulling off a baseball cap and sunglasses. Drive, she said. Just drive normally. Don't make a scene. My heart hammered in my chest. I looked out the window. Richard was still standing there, watching me with a smile. I forced myself to smile back and wave as I pulled out of the parking space. What are you doing? I hissed once we were on the road. You scared me half to death. I had to see you, she said. I've been following you. I saw you with him. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my mother. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, and her hair dyed a different color. Turn left at the next light, she instructed. Mom, I'm not going anywhere with you. You lied to me my entire life. I protected you, she snapped. Everything I did was to keep you safe from him. He's not dangerous, I said. You are. You kidnapped me. You faked our deaths. Do you have any idea how messed up that is? She leaned forward from the backseat. Pull into that gas station. We need to talk. I did as she asked, partly because I was too shocked to argue, and partly because I didn't want to have this conversation while driving. I parked in a corner spot away from the pumps. Maya, listen to me, she said, using the name she'd given me. Richard is not who you think he is. He's manipulative. He turned everyone against me back then. Made them think I was crazy. Were you diagnosed with delusional disorder? I asked bluntly. She flinched. That was a misdiagnosis. The doctors were friends with him. They were all in on it together. That sounded exactly like the kind of paranoid thinking Richard had described. I turned in my seat to face her. Mom, you need help. What you did wasn't normal. It wasn't right. I don't need help, she snapped. I need you to listen to me. We have to leave. I've got new identities set up for us in Canada. We can start over. I stared at her in disbelief. You want me to run away with you? Leave my job, my friends, my whole life? It's not safe here anymore, she insisted. They found us. It's only a matter of time before he tries to take you away from me again. I'm 23 years old, I said slowly. Nobody can take me away from anyone. I make my own choices. She wasn't listening. She was rummaging through a bag, pulling out folders. I've got everything we need. New birth certificates, driver's licenses, social security cards. I've been preparing for this possibility for years. I felt sick. All this time, she'd been ready to run again, to drag me into another lie. I'm not going anywhere with you, I said firmly. Her face changed, hardened. You've been brainwashed. One meeting with him and suddenly you believe all his lies? The only person who's been lying is you, I shouted. My entire life is built on your lies. She reached for my arm, gripping it tightly. We're leaving tonight. I have a car parked nearby. We'll ditch this one. I yanked my arm away. I'm not going. You don't understand what's at stake, she hissed. He'll turn you against me completely. I'll lose you forever. You lost me the moment I found out the truth, I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. Her face crumpled. For a second, I saw the mom I knew, the one who nursed me through the flu and cheered at my soccer games. But then her expression hardened again. Get out, I said quietly. Get out of my car. Maya, my name is Danielle. I cut her off. And I want you to leave. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then she grabbed her bag and opened the car door. When you realize I was right all along, it might be too late, she said, "but I'll be watching. I'll be waiting." She slammed the door and walked away. I watched her disappear around the corner of the gas station, my hands shaking. As soon as she was out of sight, I locked all the doors and called Richard. "She was here," I said when he answered. "My mom. She was hiding in my back seat." "What?" His voice sharpened with concern. "Are you okay? Where are you now?" I told him about the gas station, about her plans to take me to Canada. He told me to stay put, that he was on his way. I sat there, jumping at every car that pulled into the station, terrified she would come back with reinforcements. Richard arrived 15 minutes later, pulling up next to my car. I got out and practically ran to him. "She wanted me to run away with her," I said, my voice shaking. "She had fake IDs ready and everything." He put a protective arm around my shoulders. "Let's call the police." "No," I said quickly. "I don't want her arrested. I need to get away from here." He hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me back to my place. You'll be safe there." I wasn't sure if that was a good idea, but I was too rattled to drive all the way home alone. I followed Richard's car to a modest, two-story house in a quiet neighborhood. A woman with short gray hair was waiting on the porch. Elaine, I assumed. She didn't try to hug me or make a big deal of the situation. She just showed me to their guest room and asked if I wanted tea. I liked her immediately. While Richard called Officer Delgado to report the encounter with my mother, I sat in their kitchen with Elaine. She didn't push me to talk, just sat there, providing quiet company. "He never gave up hope," she finally said. "Even when everyone told him to move on, to accept that you were gone, he couldn't do it." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "Did you ever think he was, obsessed? Unhealthy about it?" She considered the question seriously. "At first, maybe. When we met, it had been 10 years since you disappeared. His house was still full of your toys, your clothes. It was like a shrine. But it wasn't unhealthy. It was grief, without closure." Richard came back into the kitchen. "Officer Delgado says they'll put out an alert for her. He wants you to come in tomorrow to make a statement." I nodded, suddenly exhausted. "I think I need to lie down for a bit." The guest room was simple but comfortable. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry I scared you. I just want to protect you. Please don't tell them where I am. I love you. Mom." I turned off my phone and closed my eyes. When I woke up, it was dark outside. I checked my watch. 8:30 p.m. I'd slept for hours. I went downstairs and found Richard and Elaine watching TV in the living room. "Feel better?" Elaine asked. I nodded, though it wasn't entirely true. "I should probably head home." Richard frowned. "Are you sure that's safe? What if your mother is waiting for you there?" He had a point. I hadn't thought of that. "I can't hide forever," I said, "and I have work on Monday." "At least let me follow you home," Richard offered. "Make sure everything's okay." I agreed to that compromise. We exchanged awkward goodbyes with Elaine, who told me I was welcome anytime. The drive back to my apartment took almost 3 hours. Richard followed me the whole way, his headlights a reassuring presence in my rearview mirror. When we reached my building, he insisted on checking my apartment before leaving. It was clear, no sign that anyone had been there. Still, I changed the locks the next day. Over the next few weeks, I tried to establish some kind of normal routine. Again, I went to work, saw friends, and talked to Richard on the phone every few days. He was careful not to push too hard, letting me set the pace for our relationship. I appreciated that. My mother texted me occasionally from different numbers, sometimes pleading, sometimes angry. I never responded. Officer Delgado called to tell me they'd found her car abandoned at a bus station, but no sign of her. One night, about a month after our first meeting, Richard invited me to dinner at his house again. This time, his stepson Jake would be there too, home from college for the weekend. I decided to go. I was curious about this other family my father had built. Jake was tall and lanky, with an easy smile. He seemed genuinely excited to meet me, asking questions about my job and my hobbies. It was strange to think that in some alternate universe, we might have grown up as siblings. After dinner, Richard showed me his home office. One wall was covered with maps and notes, his ongoing search for me over the years. "I can take this down now," he said, looking at it with a mix of emotions. "How did you keep going?" I asked. "All those years, not knowing?" He sat down heavily in his desk chair. "There were times I almost gave up, times I thought maybe you really were gone. But then I'd get a new lead, or I'd help another family find their missing child, and it would give me hope again." I noticed a framed photo on his desk, me at 3, sitting on his lap, both of us laughing at something off camera. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Something that's been bothering me?" He nodded. "If my mom really was unstable, why did she get any visitation with me? Why would a judge allow that?" Richard sighed. "The system isn't perfect. Her episodes weren't constant. She could present as completely normal for weeks at a time, and the court believed children should have relationships with both parents when possible. It made sense, but it still bothered me. If she was as dangerous as he claimed, why risk any unsupervised time?" I drove home that night with more questions than answers. When I got to my apartment, something felt off. The door was locked, everything looked normal, but I had a strange feeling. I did a quick check of all the rooms. Nothing seemed out of place until I got to my bedroom. On my pillow was a small teddy bear, one I recognized from the photos Richard had shown me, my favorite toy as a toddler, the one I supposedly carried everywhere. I definitely hadn't put it there. I backed out of the room, heart racing, and called Richard. "Someone's been in my apartment," I said when he answered. "They left something on my pillow." "What was it?" he asked, sounding alarmed. "A teddy bear. The one you said was my favorite as a kid." There was a long pause. "Danielle, I don't have that bear. It disappeared when you did." A chill ran down my spine. "Then how did it get here?" "Get out of the apartment," he said urgently. "Right now. Go to a neighbor's or wait in your car. I'm calling the police." I grabbed my purse and keys and ran out, not even bothering to lock the door behind me. I sat in my car with the doors locked, watching my apartment building, jumping at every shadow. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They searched my apartment but found no one. No signs of forced entry, just the bear sitting innocently on my pillow. They took it as evidence and dusted for fingerprints, but I already knew who had left it there. My mother was sending me a message. I couldn't stay there. I packed a bag and checked into a hotel for the night. As I was settling in, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Did you like my gift? My mother's voice. How did you get into my apartment? I demanded. I've always had a key, sweetie. Did you forget? I helped you move in. It was true. She'd helped me move 3 years ago when I first got the place. I'd never thought to ask for the key back. What do you want from me? I asked, exhausted. I want you to understand, she said. Richard is trying to turn you against me, just like before. He's the one you should be afraid of, not me. You broke into my apartment and left a creepy message. That seems pretty scary to me. She laughed. It's not creepy. It's your Boo Bear. You loved that thing. Wouldn't go anywhere without it. Richard told you that, didn't he? See, he's using your childhood to manipulate you. My head was spinning. Mom, please, just turn yourself in. Get help. I don't need help, she snapped. I need my daughter back. The daughter who trusted me, who knew I would do anything to protect her. Protect me from what? Richard has been nothing but kind to me. That's how it starts, she said darkly. He's patient. He plays the long game. But once he has you completely under his control, you'll see his true colors. I was about to argue when something occurred to me. How did you know I was meeting Richard that day? How did you find my car at the restaurant? There was a pause. I've been watching you. No, I said slowly. You knew exactly which car was mine in a crowded parking lot. You knew exactly when I'd be there. Another pause. I followed you from your apartment, but that didn't make sense either. I'd been staying at a hotel the night before after the break-in at my apartment. I hadn't gone home first. Someone told you, I said, the realization dawning. Someone has been feeding you information about me. Don't be ridiculous, she said, but her voice had changed. Become defensive. Who is it? I pressed. Aunt Patty? Someone at work? I have to go, she said abruptly. Think about what I said, Maya. Be careful who you trust. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, mind racing. Someone in my life was helping my mother. Someone was betraying me. But who? I couldn't sleep that night. I kept going over everyone I knew, everyone who might have a connection to my mother. The next morning, I called in sick to work again and drove to Aunt Patty's house. She answered the door in her bathrobe, looking surprised to see me. Maya, what are you doing here so early? Who's been talking to my mom? I asked without preamble. Who's been telling her about me? Aunt Patty's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I said, pushing past her into the house. Someone told her I was meeting Richard. Someone's been keeping her updated on my life. She followed me into the kitchen, wringing her hands. Maya, please, you're upset. Let me make you some tea. Stop calling me Maya, I shouted. That's not even my real name. She flinched. I'm sorry. It's hard to switch after all these years. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Just tell me the truth. Have you been in contact with my mom? Aunt Patty sighed and sat down at the kitchen table. She calls me sometimes. I don't tell her much, I swear. But you told her about Richard? About me meeting him? She looked away. She was worried about you. She just wanted to know you were safe. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Safe? She's the one who's dangerous. She broke into my apartment. She was hiding in my car. Your mother loves you, Aunt Patty said defensively. Everything she's done out of love. That's not love, I said. That's obsession. That's control. I left Aunt Patty's house feeling betrayed all over again. On the drive home, I called Richard and told him what I'd learned. I'm not surprised, he said. Your aunt was always loyal to your mother, even when she knew what she was doing was wrong. I don't know who to trust anymore, I admitted. You can trust me, he said. I know that's hard to believe right now, but I promise you, I only want what's best for you. I wanted to believe him, but my mother's words kept echoing in my head. Be careful who you trust. When I got back to my hotel room, I found a manila envelope that had been slipped under the door. My name, my real name, Danielle, was written on the front. Inside were photocopies of old documents, police reports, but not the ones Officer Delgado had shown me. These were reports my father had filed against my mother, but also reports my mother had filed against him. Restraining orders on both sides. Court transcripts that painted a much more complicated picture than either of them had told me. There was a note. There are two sides to every story. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m., Riverside Park by the fountain if you want to know more. No signature. I didn't recognize the handwriting. I spent the night going through these documents, trying to piece together what really happened between my parents. It wasn't as clear-cut as either of them had made it seem. There were accusations on both sides, evidence that was inconclusive, witnesses with conflicting statements. By morning, I wasn't sure what to believe anymore, but I knew I needed more answers. I decided to go to the park meeting, but I wouldn't go alone. I called Tara from work and asked if she could come with me, making up a story about meeting a potential client who seemed sketchy. She agreed without hesitation. We arrived at the park early and found a bench with a good view of the fountain. Tara sat a little distance away, pretending to read a book while I waited. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman approached the fountain. She was in her 60s, with silver hair and a professional-looking pantsuit. I didn't recognize her. She looked around, spotted me, and walked over. Danielle, she asked. I nodded, cautiously. My name is Sandra Wilkins. I was your mother's attorney 20 years ago during the custody battle. I stared at her for a moment, trying to process this new development. Sandra sat down next to me on the bench, placing a thick folder between us. I've been following your case since the arrest. she said. I wasn't sure if I should get involved, but when I saw both your parents trying to contact you, I felt you deserved the whole truth. I glanced over at Tara, who was pretending not to watch us. Why should I believe anything you say? Everyone keeps telling me different versions of the same story. Sandra nodded like she expected this reaction. That's why I brought these. She tapped the folder. Original court documents, therapy notes, evaluations from social workers, not copies, not selected pieces, everything. I hesitated before taking the folder. Were you the one who left those documents at my hotel? Yes. I still have contacts who helped me find you. She straightened her blazer. I'm retired now, but I never forgot your case. It was complicated. That was an understatement. I opened the folder and started flipping through pages. There were psychological evaluations for both my parents. My mom's showed paranoid tendencies, but my dad's showed controlling behaviors and anger issues. Neither of them is telling you the complete truth, Sandra said quietly. Your mother wasn't delusional, but she did have severe anxiety and paranoia. Your father wasn't abusive, but he was controlling and manipulative in ways that exacerbated her condition. I felt sick. So who had custody? Who was right? The court gave primary custody to your father because your mother's behavior was becoming erratic, but there were concerns about both parents. Sandra pointed to a document. This was the final custody arrangement. Your father had physical custody, but major decisions were supposed to be shared. I read through the document. It was exactly as Richard had told me, but there was more. Your father was instructed to ensure your mother received proper treatment during her visitations. He was supposed to facilitate her relationship with you, not undermine it. Sandra's voice hardened slightly. He didn't always follow that part. So he was trying to keep her away from me? Not exactly, but he would schedule activities during her visitation time or claim you were sick when you weren't. Sandra sighed. He wasn't a monster, Danielle. He was a concerned father who didn't trust your mother's stability, but his actions pushed her further into paranoia. I continued reading. Reports from supervised visits showed my mother was loving and appropriate with me. Notes from my father's therapist suggested he had trouble accepting the divorce and sharing custody. What happened the day she took me? I asked. Sandra's face grew somber. Your father had filed for full custody with no visitation rights for your mother. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Your mother believed she would lose you completely, so she just took me, faked our deaths. I'm not justifying what she did, Sandra said quickly. It was wrong. Criminal. But she genuinely believed she was protecting you. I closed the folder, feeling overwhelmed. Why are you telling me all this now? Because both of them are still doing it, she said. Still trying to control the narrative, control you. You deserve to make your own choices based on the full truth. I thanked her for the documents and watched as she walked away. Tara came over looking concerned. You okay? Who was that? I shook my head. Just someone from my past. I'll explain later. That night, I went through every document Sandra had given me. The picture that emerged wasn't black and white. My mother had mental health issues she refused to fully address. My father used those issues against her in court while presenting himself as the perfect parent. They both loved me, but they were both deeply flawed people who brought out the worst in each other. I called Richard the next morning. We need to talk. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I arrived first and got a table in the corner. When he walked in, I noticed he seemed nervous, glancing around like he expected to see my mother, lurking somewhere. Is everything okay? He asked as he sat down. I placed Sandra's folder on the table. I met with your former attorney yesterday. His face went pale. Sandra contacted you? She gave me the complete court records, I said. Not just the parts that make you look good. Richard's jaw tightened. Sandra always had a soft spot for your mother. She didn't see what I had to deal with. Like the fact that you were trying to cut Mom off from seeing me completely. I kept my voice level despite the anger bubbling up. Or that you violated the custody agreement multiple times. I was protecting you, he insisted. Your mother was becoming more unstable. The court process was too slow. That wasn't your decision to make, I said. And it doesn't justify lying to me now about what really happened. He looked down at his coffee. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. A lie of omission is still a lie, I said. You made it sound like you were the perfect father and she was completely crazy. The truth is messier than that. Richard sighed heavily. You're right, I'm sorry. I was afraid if you knew everything, you wouldn't want anything to do with me. I softened slightly. I just want honesty. From both of you. We talked for another hour. Richard admitted he'd been controlling during the marriage and that he'd used my mother's mental health against her. He also admitted he'd been planning to restrict her access to me, which triggered her desperate action. I've spent 20 years regretting how I handled things, he said. If I could go back and do it differently, I would. I believed him. People can change in 20 years. I'd seen how he was with Elaine. Respectful, loving, not controlling at all. I need to talk to Mom too, I said. Do you know where she might be? He shook his head. The police are still looking for her, but I had an idea where to find her. After leaving Richard, I drove straight to Aunt Patty's house. This time, I didn't knock. I used the spare key I knew was hidden under the flower pot and let myself in quietly. The house seemed empty, but I heard voices coming from the basement. I crept down the stairs and found exactly what I expected. My mother sitting on a pull-out couch talking to Aunt Patty. They both jumped when they saw me. Maya! My mother stood up. How did you know I was here? It was the obvious place, I said. And stop calling me Maya. My name is Danielle. She flinched but didn't argue. Are the police with you? I shook my head. I came alone. We need to talk. Aunt Patty mumbled something about giving us privacy and went upstairs. My mother sat back down on the couch and I took a chair across from her. I know everything now, I said. I met with Sandra Wilkins. I've seen all the court documents. My mother's eyes widened. Sandra! I haven't spoken to her In years. She showed me what really happened. Not your version, not Richard's version. The actual facts. I leaned forward. You both lied to me. She looked away. I was trying to protect you by kidnapping me, by making me live a lie for 20 years. My voice cracked. Do you have any idea what that's done to me? Finding out my whole identity is fake? Tears filled her eyes. I was desperate. Richard was going to take you away from me completely because you refused to get proper treatment, I said. You had mental health issues you wouldn't address. That's not true. I was seeing a therapist. Taking medication. Inconsistently, I countered. The records show you'd stop taking your meds. Miss appointments. You weren't doing what you needed to do to be a stable parent. She had no response to that. And now you're doing the same thing, I continued. Breaking into my apartment, hiding in my car, trying to convince me Richard is dangerous when he's not. You're still refusing to see that you're the one who needs help. My mother started crying in earnest now. I just didn't want to lose you again. You never lost me the first time, I said more gently. Richard wasn't perfect, but he wasn't trying to keep me from you. He was trying to make sure you were stable enough to be around me. We talked for hours. Really talked, maybe for the first time ever. She admitted she'd stopped taking her medication shortly before the custody battle escalated. She admitted the paranoia had taken over. Convincing her, Richard was out to destroy her. I believed it so completely, she said. Even now, part of me still believes he's manipulating you. He's not, I assured her. He's just a dad who missed his daughter. And yes, he made mistakes, too. Big ones. But kidnapping me wasn't the answer. By the end of our conversation, I'd convinced her to turn herself in. The charges were serious. Kidnapping, identity fraud, faking deaths for insurance money. But with Sandra's help, as her attorney again, there might be mitigating circumstances. Her mental health issues, the custody situation, the fact that she'd provided me with a stable, loving home despite everything. The next morning, I drove her to the police station. Officer Delgado was surprised but professional. My mother was processed and held for arraignment. Sandra arrived within the hour to represent her. This is the right thing, Sandra told me in the hallway. For both of you. I nodded, exhausted, but somehow lighter. What happens now? She'll likely face some jail time, but with proper psychiatric evaluation and her voluntary surrender, we can argue for a reduced sentence. Sandra squeezed my shoulder, and you can start healing. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, therapy appointments, and awkward family dinners with Richard and Elaine. I testified at my mother's hearing, explaining how she'd been a good mother despite the circumstances. The judge seemed moved, but still sentenced her to 5 years, with eligibility for parole after 2, plus mandatory psychiatric treatment. I visited her in prison every other weekend. She was on proper medication now, seeing a therapist regularly. The difference was remarkable. The paranoia had faded, replaced by clarity and genuine remorse. I'm so sorry for what I put you through, she told me during one visit. You deserved better. We all made mistakes, I said. Even Richard admits that now. Speaking of Richard, our relationship was growing slowly but steadily. I started calling him Dad, which made him cry the first time. I spent holidays with him and Elaine, getting to know my stepbrother, Jake, better, too. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. 6 months after everything happened, I legally changed my name, not back to Danielle Harmon and not keeping Maya Wilson. I became Danielle Maya Harmon, a combination of who I was born as and who I'd grown up as. I also moved to a new apartment, one neither of my parents had a key to. I needed my own space, my own identity separate from both of them. Tara from work became my closest friend through all of this. She never judged, just listened when I needed to vent about my crazy family situation. You know, she said one night over pizza. Most people just have regular family drama, like arguing over Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. You're out here with the whole identity theft kidnapping situation. I laughed. Lucky me. A year later, my mother was up for her first parole hearing. Both Richard and I testified in her favor. The board was impressed by her progress and the support system she had waiting. They granted her parole with strict conditions, continued therapy, medication compliance, and no contact with me except through approved channels initially. The day she was released, I picked her up from the prison. Richard came too, which surprised both of us. They shook hands awkwardly, the first civil interaction they'd had in over 20 years. Thank you for coming, my mother said to him. It means a lot. He nodded. Danielle wanted you here. That's what matters now. We went to lunch together, the three of us. It was strange and uncomfortable, but also somehow right. They would never be friends, but they could be civil for my sake. As we ate, I looked at these two flawed, complicated people who had both loved me in their own imperfect ways. My mother, who went to extreme lengths to keep me. My father, who never stopped looking for me. Both of them trying now, finally, to put my needs before their own. I don't know what the future holds for us. My mother is living with Aunt Patty while she gets back on her feet. My father and Elaine have invited me to spend Christmas with them. I'm taking things one day at a time, building relationships based on truth rather than lies. Sometimes I still wake up confused about who I really am. Maya or Danielle, the daughter who was stolen, or the daughter who was raised with love, despite everything. But then I remember, I'm both, and neither. I'm just me, figuring things out as I go, like everyone else. The only difference is, I've got 2 names on my driver's license, and twice the family drama of most people. But hey, at least I've got one hell of a story to tell at parties.